Welcome to the Genki 2 Lesson 17 ToKini Andy live stream. Today we're going to be covering reporting what you've heard in Japanese using "そうです," informal quotations in Japanese, one of the common conditionals, in other words, if, you don't need to, it looks like, and sequencing events with two different Japanese expressions that will be very useful to you, I think. But before we get into that, let's go ahead and talk about this. If you've been enjoying the live streams here on ToKini Andy and you feel like you need some extra material to help you get through the book, well, the ToKini Andy Patreon might be just what you're looking for. There, Yuki and I cover all of the textbook practice with you, so we basically go through all of the exercises with you that need a partner, all of the exercises that don't need a partner. Yuki will basically say all the answers with you, but you have to, of course, try to say them first, so you try to come up with the answer on your own, you say it out loud, and then you get to hear what the correct answer is out loud immediately after that. We've also got listening and shadowing videos so you can practice listening to Japanese and repeating after Japanese and shadowing, so saying it along with us so you can get used to the rhythm and pronunciation of Japanese. We've also got vocabulary videos where we cover all of the vocabulary in Genki and cover example sentences with some of the vocabulary and extra little tidbits that might not be in the book that we feel is important when covering those vocabulary videos. So that might be something you want to check out. There's two different tiers. So if you've been finding this helpful and you want to help support the channel and help us make even more videos, please consider checking out the ToKini Andy Patreon. Thank you to all my patrons who are here tonight. There's also a merch store with some shirts that Yuki designed for ToKini Andy. Those are pretty cool, so check those out. Even if you can't support us financially in any way, and you'd still like to help out some other way, one of the best ways to do that is by just hitting the like button and sharing this video with anyone you know who might be studying Japanese. The first thing we're going to be covering tonight is reporting what you've heard in Japanese. We've already gone over how to report like a direct quote, which was to itteimashita and stuff like that. But another way that you can report something that you've heard or some kind of information that you've heard around sort of randomly is with "そうです." Now, "そうです," we've covered "そうです" before, but this one is a little bit different, and I'm going to get into those differences on the next slide. But before we get into that, let me just go over how to use this new one, the "そうです," that means I hear that or I heard that. To use it, you just take a verb in its short form, any short form, and add "そうです." With e adjectives, you just add "そうです" directly to the end. With na adjectives, you add "だそうです." And with nouns, "だそうです." So these examples, if we pop over to here, you're going to see what the difference is. So this is the "そうです" that we covered in lesson 13, I believe it was. And that was dropping the e off of e adjectives and saying things like "美味しそうです," which means it looks delicious. This "そうです" was sort of describing the physical appearance or how looking at something made you feel. Like if you looked at that person and you thought they looked happy, 嬉しそうだ or 嬉しそうです. So you look happy. That was the old one we went over. But this one's a little different. With almost the exact same sentences, you can kind of see what the difference is. Here we do not cut off the e. We have 美味しそうです. I hear that it is delicious. So you be using this structure if you've heard someone else say that was really good, like it tasted really good. So if Yuki said, "Wow, delicious," and then someone else asked, "How was that thing that Yuki tried?" And I would say, 美味しそうです. So you don't say 美味しそう. You extend it with that extra e. 美味しそうです. I hear that it's delicious, or she said that it's delicious. Same with 嬉しそうです or 嬉しそうだ. 厳しかったそうです. So here we have the past tense. I mentioned that if we go back up to here, any short form that includes past tenses, negatives. 厳しかったそうです. I hear that they were strict. So with this そうです, you're not going to be conjugating the des. With the old one, you could say things like 美味しそうじゃない. That's something you could say with the old one we went over. But with this one, you generally do not conjugate the des. You conjugate what comes before it. So 厳しかったそうです. I hear that they were strict. Or if you went with a negative, 厳しくなかったそうです. I hear that they were not strict. Some more example sentences. Let me drop back over to the full screen. 食べるそうです. So here's another thing that looks a little weird compared to the old そうです. You basically have a verb in its short form, 食べる, And then そうです. I hear that they will eat. Or it seems like they will eat. Like I'm looking at them and the person said, yeah, I think I'll eat it. So 食べるそうです. This one is 火事だったそうだ. So here's a noun. 火事. 火事 is it's a fire, but not just any fire. It's generally a fire that is unexpected and unwanted. So like a house fire or a forest fire or an oven fire. Things you don't want to happen are 火事. It's not like a campfire or a fire on the stove that you expect to be there when you turn the stove on. This is the bad type. So 火事だったそうだ. So with nouns we have だ, and you can also have the past tense of だ, so だったそうだ. I hear that it was a fire. So I must have heard from someone that there was a fire. 火事だったそうだ. 最悪だそうです. I hear that it's terrible or the worst. 最悪 means the worst or terrible. You'll hear people just say 最悪 a lot, actually. When someone tells them a story and it's about, someone's boyfriend did something terrible and then their friend hears that story and they say 最悪, just that I guess, adjective or noun on its own just means, wow, that's the worst. But in this case, 最悪だそうです. It sounds like, or I hear that, it is, or perhaps he was, terrible, the worst. The important point to take home here is that this soda is referencing something that you've heard yourself or possibly seen. Let's jump back over here to see the full screen. Here's with negatives. So with negatives in the old sodes, the different one, which is something looks some way. For negatives, we put 美味しくなさそうです. It doesn't look delicious, or it looks not delicious, literally. 嬉しくなさそうだ. You don't look happy. 厳しそうじゃない. So this is something you can do with the so des that means doesn't look strict. But with the one we're learning tonight, let's pop over here. 美味しくないそうです. I hear that it's not delicious. 嬉しくないそうだ. I hear that they are not happy. 厳しくなかったそうです. I hear that they were not strict. So I hope you can kind of see what the difference is there. The main thing is that the person saying this sentence probably heard this information somewhere. Some longer, more complicated sentences, we've got 社長によると今日は残業があるそうです. According to the company president, we have overtime today. So when you want to specify the place that you heard this information from, you can use this sort of expression. It's the ni particle plus yoru to, the particle to, but together it's an expression that means according to whatever comes before it. So 社長, company president, によると, according to the company president, 今日は残業がある. Today we have overtime, そうです. It appears that we have overtime today. According to 社長 would be the full sentence, right? So that's a very important construction here. 社長によると今日は残業があるそうです. The next sentence is あの人は安藤さんの友達だそうです. I hear that that person is 安藤 san's friend. So that person, あの人は安藤さんの友達だそうです. So an important thing to keep in mind here is that I don't know that it's their friend. Like it's not me that knows that. I heard it. I heard that that's their friend. I can neither confirm nor deny it, but I've heard that information. So I use そうです. If I just said あの人は安藤さんの友達だ or です, it means that I know that it's their friend. That's who it is. But with this そうです, it means that I heard from someone that that's his friend. So that's the important distinction there between just a straight this sentence. We have another によると here. We've got 天気予報によると雪が降らないそうです. According to the weather forecast, it will not snow, or it appears that it will not snow. Now, you may remember from the old そうです, we could have said 雪が降らなさそうです. That's the old lesson 13 so. Not old, like it's just a different grammar point. 降らなさそう means it doesn't look like it's gonna snow. But 雪が降らないそうです means apparently, or I hear that it's not going to snow. So there's a difference. I probably drilled that home a little bit too hard. I imagine you get it by now. But 天気予報によると雪が降らないそうです. According to the weather forecast, it appears that it will not snow. Let's go ahead and jump into the dialogue. I'll read it slowly once, then at full speed. Then we'll go through the English, and I will get to your questions, and we'll go over a practice question that you guys can try out. Okay, here we go. We've got Dei-san and Yuki-san. 宝くじは5億円になっているそうです。そうですか。うん。ニュースによると、今までの一番高い宝くじだそうですよ。買いますか？買いません。でも、安藤さんは買うそうです。Full speed. 宝くじは5億円になっているそうです。そうですか。うん。ニュースによると、今までの一番高い宝くじだそうですよ。買いますか？買いません。でも、安藤さんは買うそうです。Let's go for the English translation. 宝くじは5億円になっているそうです。It looks like, or I hear that the lottery is at 500 million yen. So, 億 is 100 million. 500 million. I guess this should be that I hear that the lottery is at 500,000 yen. I should probably change that, but I hear that the lottery is at 500 million yen. そうですか? Oh, really? So by the way, this is teiru, right? You can also use it teiru. Any short form works perfectly fine with this そうです。ニュースによると、according to the news, 今までの until now の一番高い宝くじだそうですよ。According to the news, it appears that it's the most expensive or biggest lottery to date. To date would be 今まで. To date or up until now. 買いますか? Are you going to buy a ticket? So this is all implied. It's literally just buy. Are you going to buy a ticket? 買いません. No, I won't buy. でも, but 安藤さんは買うそうです. But I heard Ando-san will buy a ticket. All right, so question time. What is something that you heard recently? Please use そうです. What I've heard recently is that 友達が結婚したそうです. I heard that a friend of mine got married. Let's jump into informal quotations. So, this is someone said. It's very similar to そうです. Very similar in its usage. But Genki, it doesn't quite cover it honestly, I feel like. Genki covers this as small tsu te, so just te. Yeah, just te. And they present it as being a different form of so des. But that's not entirely accurate, I don't feel, because that te is actually just a shortened colloquial form of the to particle, which allows you to attach verbs like itteita and omotte iru and stuff like that. So what just small tsu te on its own is to itteita with the itteita dropped. So it's really short form te itteita. But when you drop that itteita, it still works in casual conversation because people know that you're quoting the person. You're saying what they said. But you can think of its usage as the same as so des. We'll look into some examples to show you. I'm going to use the exact same sentences just with te instead of so des. But anyway, you can use any verb here after small tsu plus te that you could use after to. So you could also say te omotteita and stuff like that. Anything that you could connect to to, you can use small tsu te instead. It's easier to say, which is why people use it in casual conversation. And even in semi-formal situations, you see it with long forms plenty as well, because it's just easier to say. It's not necessarily impolite, but it is a little less formal than to, obviously, because, saying something a little more difficult is more polite. That makes sense, right? So to use it, you just take a short form, any short form, plus small tsu te, itteita. E-adjectives, te itteita. With non-adjectives, you need da. So non-adjective datte itteita. Noun plus datte itteita. Okay? So let's go over those examples from before. We've got oishii te. So the difference in this translation, in my opinion, is that it comes out more as they said that it is delicious, or so-and-so said that it's delicious. If you haven't introduced in the conversation a person that would have said this, then I suppose it could translate the same way as so des as and be I heard that it's delicious. And I do use, and other people do use te in that way sometimes. 美味しいって. Maybe the person listening doesn't know who said that, but they know that I heard that it's delicious. Personally, it still implies that someone said it though, so I still would translate this as someone said it is delicious, or so-and-so said it's delicious. 嬉しいって, they said they are happy. 厳しかったって, they said they were strict, or so-and-so was strict. With negatives, it's the same thing. 美味しくないって, they said that it is not delicious. 嬉しくないって, they said that they are not happy. If this was a full normal sentence, it would be 嬉しくないと言っていた. That's what this means. 嬉しくないって means 嬉しくないと言っていた. 厳しくなかったって in other words, 厳しくなかったと言っていました. Right? That's the full formal version. They said they were not strict. But 厳しくなかったって is how you're gonna speak with, in normal conversation with people who are close to your age or with your friends or family. 食べるって I hear they will eat. 火事だったって So this is the same 火事だった そうです but here we need to use って So 火事だったって It's a little bit, there's two small tsu's there, so it's a bit of a mouthful, but I hear it was a fire. Or so-and-so said it was a fire. 火事だったって 最悪だって You're gonna hear だって a lot. Because, well, that's how you use this. 最悪だって I hear that it is the worst or terrible. Now, this is a little bit of an exception here. なんて言ってた? なんて言ってた? You notice there's no small tsu, and that's because after a right here, after an the small tsu goes away. So it becomes なんて言ってた? なんて言ってた? Or なんて? What did they say? Keep that in mind. After an you'll lose the small tsu. But it's still the same thing. なんて言ってた? Some longer sentences. We've got 社長、今日は残業があるって. So this is the same, I'm expressing the same idea as I did from that last sentence where 社長によると今日は残業があるそうです. Same idea, just a much more casual way of saying it. 社長、今日は残業があるって. The company president said we have overtime today. あの人は安藤さんの友達だって. Apparently, that person is Ando-san's friend. お母さんは雪が降らないって言ってた. That's a hard one. 言ってた is maybe easier. 言ってた. Either way is fine. 言ってた is a shortened version of 言っていた, which is the short version of 言っていました. お母さんは雪が降らないって言っていた. I added the E before ta because it's just easier for me to say, but お母さんは雪が降らないって言ってた. You can practice that if you want. Let's go ahead and do the conversation. I'll read it slowly one time, then at full speed. Then we'll go over the English translation. I'll give you the question for this section, and you can ask any questions you might have about this section or anything else. Here we go. Yuki and myself are speaking now. 宝くじは5億円だって。そう買おう? でも当たらないでしょ? でも買わなかったら絶対当たらないよ。まあ友達が100万円当たったことがあるって言ってたけど、僕の友達もあるって。 Full speed. 宝くじは5億円だって。そう買おう? でも当たらないでしょ? でも買わなかったら絶対当たらないよ。まあ友達が100万円当たったことがあるって言ってたけど、僕の友達もあるって。 Let's go with English. 宝くじは5億円だって。 The lottery is at 500 million yen apparently. So I believe that would be $5 million? 500? Yeah, that would be 5 million, yeah? The lottery is at 5 million yen, apparently. Or I heard. So, 買おう? Huh? Really? Should we buy? The should we is implied here with just the verb on its own and a question mark. 買おう? Should we buy or are you gonna buy one? でも当たらないでしょ? But we won't win, you know. You you hit the lottery in Japanese as well. Ataru means to hit. Just like if you throw a rock at something and you hit it, ataru, you hit it. So it's the same as in English. You hit the lottery, ataru. 宝くじに当たる. In this case, we won't win. 当たらないでしょ? でも、買わなかったら絶対当たらないよ. But if we don't buy, we will never win. You know, 絶対 means with a negative is never. Without a doubt. No way. 買わなかったら, tara is our next section, and that basically means, no, it does mean if. If. We're going to get to that though. Stick around if you want to learn more about how to say if in Japanese. まあ、友達が100万円当たったことがあるって言ってたけど. Well, my friend said they won 1 million yen once, but 僕の友達もあるって. My friend said they also won once. Does this mean they're going to buy something? I don't know. But they heard a lot of different things. This was they heard from their friend, 友達が100万円当たったことがあるって. And my friend said they also have that experience. って. Question time. What is something a friend said to you recently? It can be the same thing that you used for so des if you'd like, or it can be something else. My friend, 友達結婚したって. We're probably going to go ahead and jump on to common conditional. This is going to be our fun section for today. It's probably going to be the most, well, no, you'll probably use te the most out of anything we cover tonight because it's just so useful and so common. But tara is the one of the long-awaited conditionals, which I feel like probably should have been introduced in Genki 1. I have a big problem actually with the way that Genki has sort of organized some of the things again in Genki 2. For example, they taught something tara do desu ka, which uses this common conditional. So they taught an expression that uses this conditional before they taught it. And they're going to do the same thing again with the next important conditional, which is ba. They're going to teach ba yokatta, which means I wish I did, or it would be good if I did. Ba yokatta. Before they actually teach the form itself, which I think is idiotic. I don't understand. I think they teach ba yokatta in the next lesson, or maybe in 18 or 19, and they don't teach ba, the if form, until lesson 22. Like, what is that? That makes absolutely no sense to me. And it makes me want to write my own textbook because the order of things is ridiculous, but it's nice to finally get to it now. All right, so now that that rant is over, let's go ahead and jump into the common conditional, which should have come in lesson 13 or before. So a conditional, it just means if, right? So this conditional is tara, and it means if A, then B. In the situation where we have sentence A, tara, sentence B. So it could mean if A occurs, then B. It can also mean when A occurs, then B. It depends on the situation, not the sentence structure. It's going to depend on the context. It can also mean if A were to occur, then B. So hypothetical situations, right? You can use tara in all of those situations. Tara covers probably the most different situations of any of the possible conditionals in Japanese. We will go over later in this section the difference between nara, which is the only other conditional we've gone over so far in Genki. And I'll go over a quick example that can clearly show you what the difference is, because they all do have some subtle differences. Nara and tara are actually quite different, and you'll see what I mean when we get to those examples. But let's go over how to use it first. Now, it may be easier for you to think of tara as just da. The reason for that is because it's actually the past tense of e-adjectives, verbs, datta plus a da. So the ta in tara is the end of a past tense. For example, tabetara. So the past tense verb of taberu, to eat, tabetara. Short form past of an e-adjective, so oishikatta ra. So that ta comes from the adjective itself. Na-adjective plus datta ra, so the ta is part of datta, the past tense of da, and same in the nouns. So it may be easier to think of this as da, but if you look it up in any dictionary or any textbook, it's always going to be tara. So you need to be aware that it is referred to as tara, but when you're learning it, I think it makes more sense to think of it as a single particle called da. So that's how I'm going to color it in this lesson. But just keep in mind, we're referring to tara if you're looking it up anywhere else. So some example sentences. 美味しかったらもう少し食べます. If it tastes good, I'll eat a little more. So here's the if, then. Just a straight if this, then that. That's Genki goes over about 3 pages on this, and what most of their explanation comes down to is trying to express the fact that it's if, then, in a bunch of extra words. There are some little subtleties with this that we're going to go through, but generally speaking, tada is just a simple if, then statement if you know anything about programming. So, 美味しかったらもう少し食べます. If it tastes good, I'll eat a little more. 仕事が終わったら飲みに行こう. If we finish work, let's go drinking. Or when we finish work, let's go drinking. So, what is the difference here? Why is it both meanings? Well, it's contextual. So, for example, say you're at work one day and you're complaining because you've got so much to do. You're positive that you're not going to be able to finish today. You think you're going to have to work until 1 in the morning. So your coworker comes over and says to you, ねえ、仕事が終わったら飲みに行こう. In this situation, because you actually might not finish work, this one means if. If we finish work, let's go drinking. But if you never have overtime and you always go home at 5 o'clock, you always finish work on time, doesn't matter how much you have, that's the kind of job you have, then this sentence would mean when we finish work, let's go drinking. Because obviously you're going to finish work. So if your friend in that company comes up to you and says, 仕事が終わったら飲みに行こう, that's more of a when we finish work, let's go drinking. Okay, so the difference of whether it's an if or a when using tada is completely dependent on the context of the situation. And there's no way to tell just by reading a single sentence whether it means if or when. So a standalone sentence technically means both. It's within context that it gets those subtle differences. Our next sentence is 宝くじに当たったら何がしたい? This one actually shows up in our dialogue. If you won the lottery, what do you want to do? Let me know in chat or down in the comments what you want to do if you win the lottery. All right, so let's go over how to use this with negatives. If A doesn't occur, then B. Well, it's pretty much the same thing, but you take a negative sentence plus tada and then sentence B. So if or when A does not occur, then B. And if A were not to occur, then B. So I don't think I went over a hypothetical in the last section, did I? Oh, this is the hypothetical. So 宝くじに当たったら何がしたい? This is that hypothetical I was talking about. You might not win the lottery, but if you were to win the lottery, hypothetically, what do you want to do? Okay, so negative. Negatives can mean if when A doesn't occur, then B, or if A were not to occur, so another hypothetical, then B. Same idea, you need to make it the past tense to get that ta before da, so negative form, short form negative past would be for taberu, to eat, tabenakatta da. Short form negative past of the adjective, so oishiku nakatta da. Non-adjectives, here's the main difference here. Use the negative past of da, which is janakatta. Janakattara. Noun janakattara. So that's probably the hardest part of this to remember. But if we're in lesson 17. You probably know that the negative of da is janai. And that the past tense of that is janakattara. Janakatta. If you don't remember that yet, you might want to go back a few lessons and work on that. All right, so some example sentences. 終わらなかったらいけないよ. If I don't finish, I can't go, you know. The yo no is that yo. 終わらなかったら if I don't finish. いけない I can't go. Yo, you know. 人間じゃなかったら何になりたい? Here's a hypothetical. If you weren't a human, 人間じゃなかったら何になりたい? What do you want to become? 何になりたい? 彼女が優しくなかったら別れるでしょう. If your girlfriend wasn't kind, you would break up probably, or you would probably break up. 優しくなかったら別れるでしょう. All right, so here is the difference between nara and tada, and I feel like this example, I got this from the grammar dictionary, basic dictionary of basic Japanese grammar. I don't know if you can see it back there. No, you can only see lenses. Excellent book if you don't have it. It has tons of extra explanations on things like this. And that's where I nabbed these 2 sentences from because I thought they were perfect. They completely express the difference between nara and tada, or they perfectly express the difference between nara and tada. So let's take a look. 安藤さんが 来たら帰ります. So in this situation with ら, this sentence means if or when Ando-san comes, I'll go home. So maybe I'll go home with him or I'm waiting for him to take over for me. Ando-san が来たら帰ります. Now take a look at なら. Ando-san が来るなら帰ります. If it's true that Ando-san will come, I'll go home. Now, this could actually be pretty cheeky. It might mean if that guy's coming, I'm going home. Ando-san が来るなら俺帰ります. You know, in that situation. So there's tone and context that is expressing that. But it could also mean that if it's true that Ando-san's going to come take over for me, then I'll go home. But you can see the difference there, right? The first one is if he comes or when he comes. So he's coming. I'm expecting it. That's when I'm going to go home. This one, I've heard that he's coming. And I'm asking, if it's really true that he's coming, I'll go home. So that's the difference between da and nara. Nara is if it's true that. And da is just if, when. Let's go ahead and go over to the dialogue. I'll read it slowly one time, then at full speed we'll go over the English translation. I'll give you a question to answer yourself, and then you can ask any questions you might have on this section. All right, let's get into it. Yuki and Andy still. 当たったらどうする? ねえ。Yuki なら何したい? スーパーでスイスチーズを3パウンド買いたい。え、それだけ? そして隣のハムのところで高いソーセージを買いたい。5億円だよ。5億円だよ。Full speed. 当たったらどうする? ねえ。ユキなら何したい? スーパーでスイスチーズを3パウンド買いたい。え、それだけ? そして隣のハムのところで高いソーセージを買いたい。5億円だよ。Let's go over the English translation. 当たったらどうする? What would you do if you won or if you hit the lottery? Obviously is implied here. If you just jumped here from and skipped the last section, you might not know that, but we're talking about the lottery here. What would you do if you won? ねえ, right? Yuki なら何したい? What about you? If it's you, or if it were you, Yuki, what do you want to do? Yuki なら何したい? スーパーでスイスチーズを3パウンド買いたい. This is a real conversation that Yuki had and I had when we were going over this lesson. It's one of the first times we actually did a dialogue together in this one, and I asked her the question for real. And this was her answer. She wants to buy 3 pounds of Swiss cheese. You can't get Swiss cheese in Japan, so to be fair, it's not necessarily a bad idea. But my facial expression was the same as this one. え、それだけ? That's all? There's the furigana. そして隣のハムのところで高いソーセージを買いたい. And then そして next to that in the ham section, ハムのところで in the ham section, I want to buy 買いたい expensive sausage. 高いソーセージを買いたい. My grandmother always buys decent sausage from the deli when we visit home, and Yuki wants to buy that. 5億円だよ. It's 500 million yen that we're talking about here, man. All right, question time. 人間じゃなかったら何になりたい? If you were not a human, what do you want to become? 人間じゃなかったらワシになりたい. So this is how I want you to answer. 人間じゃなかったら something something になりたい. So I want to become an eagle. ワシ. 人間じゃなかったらワシになりたい. You don't need to in Japanese. Let's review something really quick. Remember, てもいいです. In other words, you may do something. And てもいいですか? May I do something? Well, today we're going to be covering the negative form of that, which is て form もいいです, which means you do not need to do something. It's basically the same thing, just the negative. But you don't use this, well, actually, you can use this with a question mark. 食べなくてもいいですか? Is it okay if I do not eat? So you can use it that way. I don't think I have any examples in this section like that, but just know that that is a thing. So to use this, you take the negative short form of a verb, cut off the E, and add くてもいいです. It'll look better with the examples. Same with negative E adjectives. Cut the E, くてもいいです. Non-adjectives, じゃなくてもいいです. And nouns, じゃなくてもいいです. So basically here, you're cutting the E off じゃない and adding くて. But I just thought it looked better like this. じゃなくてもいいです. Let's go over some examples. 食べなくてもいいですよ. You don't have to eat, you know. Let's get rid of the chat. You don't have to eat, you know. 食べなくてもいいですよ. You could also make that a question if you wanted to. 食べなくてもいいですか? Is it okay if I don't eat? おいしくなくてもいい. It doesn't have to be delicious. So you can drop the des, just like you can in the previous lesson 6, てもいい. きれいじゃなくていい. You can also drop the も. じゃなくていい. That's also perfectly fine, very casual, but you can do it. It doesn't have to be pretty. きれいじゃなくていい. あなたじゃなくてもいいです. It doesn't have to be you. Some more complicated sentences. We have 鍵をかけなくてもいいよ. You don't have to lock the door, you know. In Japan, you really don't. I do now. I didn't used to. Even when I lived in this house a long time ago, I didn't lock the door, ever. Maybe when I slept. And in my old apartment, I don't think we ever locked the door. But the outside door was always locked, so, well. 作らなきゃいけないけど、完璧じゃなくていいって。I have to make it, but they said it doesn't have to be perfect. So we use て here to mean they said. It doesn't have to be 完璧. I don't know if that's in Genki or not, but it means perfect. 作らなきゃいけないけど、I have to make it, but 完璧じゃなくていいって。They said it doesn't have to be perfect. お茶を入れてくれたら、晩ご飯を作らなくてもいいよ. If you make tea, it's okay if you don't make dinner. Sweet deal. お茶を入れてくれたら. So if you make tea for me, basically, this is the てくれる, which I think was a few lessons ago. Means if you do this for me, you don't have to make dinner. It's okay if you don't make dinner. ご飯を作らなくてもいいよ. And that's it. Let's go into the dialogue. Full speed, slow once, then full speed. I'll go over the English translation and we'll get to your questions and to the question section. まあ、ソーセージは高くなくてもいい。いや、そうじゃない。5億円が当たったらもっと高いものを買わなくてもいいの？いい。アンディは当たったらまあ、5億円当たったらもう仕事をしなくてもいいから旅行したいかな。私も旅行したい。お前もかよ。Full speed. まあ、ソーセージは高くなくてもいい。いや、そうじゃない。5億円が当たったらもっと高いものを買わなくてもいいの？いい。アンディは当たったらまあ、5億円当たったらもう仕事をしなくてもいいから旅行したいかな。私も旅行したい。お前もかよ。Let's go over the English. まあ、ソーセージは高くなくてもいい。Well, it's okay if it's not expensive sausage. いや、そうじゃない。5億円が当たったらもっと高いものを買わなくてもいいの？ No, that's not what I mean. そうじゃない。If you won 500 million yen, 5億円が当たったら if you won 500 yen, you don't want to buy any more expensive things? もっと高い more expensive もの things 買わなくてもいいの？ You don't need to buy or you don't want to buy any more expensive things? It's okay to not buy more expensive things is the literal translation. E. No. Interesting little thing. If you just said E on its own, it means no, I don't need that. No. Andy wa, what about you, Andy? 当たったら if I won? まあ、5億円当たったらもう仕事をしなくてもいいから if I won 500 million yen, I don't need to work anymore. So, I guess I'd want to travel. 旅行したいかな? I guess. That かな is I guess. So, I guess I'd want to travel. 旅行したいかな? 私も旅行したい. I also want to travel. お前もかよ. Are you serious is the translation I have here, but it literally means seriously, you too? Omae, so that's the you, mo, to, kayo is the particles, the question particle plus yo. You'll hear this one a lot in anime, you'll hear it in casual conversation, but it's like, are you serious, or you seriously mean that? Like, the speaker is very surprised to hear that, or frustrated to hear that. Like, you just said you want to buy cheese, and you don't need anything expensive, but you want to travel too? Seriously? Omae mo kayo? Try and use that kayo. I doubt that shows up in any textbooks anytime soon. Question time. What is something that you don't need to do tomorrow? For me, 明日仕事に行かなくてもいいです. Why is iku orange? I forgot to change the color there, but that's okay. 明日仕事に行かなくてもいいです. I don't have to go to work tomorrow. Yay! How about you guys? Let's check out chat. Let's go ahead and jump into it looks like. This is similar to the so des from lesson 13, which we alluded to in the beginning of this lesson in section 1. But this time it's みたいです. So we take the short form plus みたいです, and it means look like. It sort of has the same meaning as so des, but we're going to talk about the difference here right now. So for verbs, you take the short form of a verb plus みたいです. It looks like that verb. Nouns, noun plus みたいです. This means that maybe, for example, a person looks like this noun. Now, you can use みたいです with e adjectives, for example, negative e adjectives, and with na adjectives. I can't remember why I have negative here. We'll figure that out. But it's not very common. It's much more common to use so des with e adjectives and na adjectives. So, for example, おいしそう is far more common than おいしいみたいです. Much more common to say おいしそうです. So just keep that in mind that the most common way of using みたいです is with verbs and nouns. So I'm going to mostly cover those today. I will maybe throw in one or two examples with any adjective though. So our first example sentences are 犬みたいですね. They look like a dog, don't they? 犬みたいですね. Or it looks like a dog, doesn't it? 怒っているみたいですね. Or 怒っているみたい. It looks like they are angry. 怒っているみたい. 私も忘れたみたいです. So you can also use in this situation to, like, in reference to yourself. It looks like I forgot as well. 私も忘れたみたいです. So it doesn't necessarily have to be you're looking at another person and seeing that, you know, it looks like they forgot something. It can also be in reference to yourself. 私も忘れたみたい. 私も忘れたみたい. It looks like I forgot as well. Some more complicated sentences. 安藤さんはお祭りのおじさんみたい. Ando-san looks like an old festival guy. That's what he's based on. 友達は来られなかったみたいから早く帰ります. It looks like my friend couldn't come. 友達はだから so we needed だ. Sorry. 友達は来られなかったみたいだから we need a だ there. 早く帰ります. It looks like my friend couldn't come. Remember, we need a だ there. So I'll go home early. レイさんは悲しいみたい. So here we have an e adjective, and I'm going to show you when we use it. レイさんは悲しいみたい. 彼氏と別れたから. Now, usually if you were looking and you saw Rei and she looked sad, you would say, レイさんは悲しそうだね. 彼氏と別れたからかな? It looks like Rei is sad because she broke up with her boyfriend. You could use it, but so this is more common. Now, you could use this, for example, if someone was asking about her and you wanted to say, oh, it looks like she's sad, right? Apparently she's sad. So in that sense, you could use it this way with any adjective, but it's less common than so des in most situations. 彼氏と別れたから. Because she broke up with her boyfriend, she's sad. All right. And that brings us to the dialogue. It's a pretty simple section. And it's a pretty simple dialogue. I'll read it slowly once, then at full speed, we'll go over the English. I'll give you a question, and then I'll get to your questions. So, Ando-san has jumped into the fray. 俺、当たったみたい。何？いくら？ 5 億？そうみたい。え？その宝くじを見せてよ。Full speed. 俺、当たったみたい。何？いくら？ 5 億？そうみたい。え？その宝くじを見せてよ。Alright, let's go over the English. 俺、当たったみたい。It appears that I won. 何？ What? 当たったみたい。It appears that I won, or it looks like I won. 俺、当たったみたい。 Nani? What? Ikura? How much? Easy, easy. 5億? 500 million? そうみたい. It looks like it. Or, yes, it looks like it, basically. そうみたい. You'll hear that a lot. そうみたい. That's what it looks like. その宝くじを見せてよ. Show me that lottery ticket. Question time. What does someone close to you look or act like? For some reason, it became this. おじいちゃんはクマみたい。おじいちゃんはクマみたい。My grandfather looks like a bear. おじいちゃんはクマみたい. What does someone close to you look or act like? So let's go ahead and jump into the final section, which is sequencing events. We've got two expressions. The first one we're going to go over is verb A plus 前に and verb B. So before A, 前に, before A occurs or before A, B. To use it with verbs and just the short form present. Only the short form present plus 前に. Some example sentences. 食べる前に手を洗って before you eat, wash your hands. So that's a request. 食べる前に手を洗って A lot of people get on my case recently in comments for saying 前. I often say 前. 前. People love to pick on my pronunciation of 前 and 食べる in the comments. Whatever. 行く前に鍵をかけた. Before I went, I locked the door. 行く前に鍵をかけた. お茶を入れる前にお湯を沸かさなきゃいけない. Before you make tea, お茶を入れる前に you must boil water. So, right? This is first, this is second. Before this, you must do this. Or no, I'm sorry. This is second, this is next. Oops, what happened there? So this has to be done before this can happen. 行く前に鍵をかけた. So this happens before this. B happens before A. I believe I wrote that correctly. Before A can occur, B must happen. Yes, that's 前に, right? Our next expression is てから, which is the opposite. After A occurs or after A finishes, then B. So てから, て form plus から. The first time I ever used this expression in conversation, or maybe it was a line message, it was in this sentence right here. This is the first time I ever used it. ラーメンを食べてから行きます. After I eat ramen or after I finish eating ramen, I will go. ラーメンを食べてから行きます. その仕事を終わってから話しましょう. Let's talk after you finish that work. So after you finish that work, let's talk would be another way you could formulate the English. てから. 友達がアメリカに帰ってから寂しいです. After my friend went back to America, I've been lonely. 友達がアメリカに帰ってから寂しいです. So you can also use this to express, basically in this situation, a state of being that you're in after this thing happened. Yeah. All right, and that's it. So let's go ahead over the dialogue. We'll go slowly once, then at full speed. I'll go over the English translation. We'll get to the question, and then you can ask any questions you might have, and we'll have a chat. Ando-san, 番号は48回、15組、16234に。51組だよ。組。なんだって言う前にちゃんと確認してよ。やったー !500 円当たった金をもらってからビール買おう !Full speed. 番号は48回15組1623451組だよ。なんだって言う前にちゃんと確認してよ。やったー !500 円当たった !500 円当たった金をもらってからビール買おう番号は48回 The number is 48th time 15組 Group 15 16234 16234 2. So for this to make sense, I feel like I have to bring this up quickly. You can look at my Patreon here. But let's go ahead and search Japanese lottery ticket and show you what this is. So when you have a Japanese lottery ticket, it's always going to have the time. So it's the 733rd time. So in our example, it's 48th time. This one is 733回. Then there's a group. This one is 0 gumi. So group 0. And this is the winning number. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you need to get all of these numbers correct. The time, the group, and the number to win the full amount. But if you get either one of them correct, you'll win a certain amount of money, a small amount of money or whatever. So here's some other examples of that. They will always have the time, the group, and the number. If you look at any of them. So here's 771回8組166982. That's this lottery ticket here. So that's where that's coming from. Okay. 51組だよ. What? It's group 51, man. So I don't know if she's saying that on his ticket it says 51 or if I think the winning one was actually 51, but he thought it was 15. Oh well. なんだって? What did you say? なんだって? I mentioned this one earlier in the lesson. It means what? Say that again. What did you say? Or what did they say? Is another thing that this could mean depending on the context. But なんだって? What did you say? 言う前に Before you say things like that, 言う前にちゃんと確認してよ. Check properly. Properly is ちゃんと確認してよ. Check properly, man. やったー !500 円当たった Yay! I won 500 yen! Yuki and Andy are like, what? You just thought you won 500 million yen and you're psyched about 500 yen? Ando-san is a simple man with simple tastes. 金をもらってからビール買おう. After I get the money, I think I'll buy beer. The end. Question time. Please explain to me the sequence of events between these two pictures using te kara or mae ni. Either one is fine. Use it in the chat. This one, now that you've seen what I was expecting there, 料理をしてから食べます or 食べる前に料理する. I think you should be able to figure out this sequence of events. I believe this is the last one for tonight. Alright guys, well, thumbs up を攻撃してください. Please smash the thumbs up like button and チャンネル登録お願いします. Please subscribe to this channel and hit the bell so that you know when we go live next time. And you know when new videos come out. There's going to be lots of new videos coming out soon. Alright guys, thank you so much. Have a great night. Thank you for being here. Arigato! Oh, wait. I always forget this now. First this. Arigatou gozaimasu.
お疲れ様でした。
また次のビデオで会いましょうね。日本語勉強したいのか？俺と同じ風に日本語を喋れるようになりたいのか？この本持ってるのか？ Then we're here to help. そうなの？俺は無理って言おうと思った。On the ToKini Andy Patreon, we have listening and shadowing practice, Genki vocabulary practice, Genki textbook practice where Yuki, Ando, and I are your partners. Eventually, even workbook practice. そうなの？給料出る？
確かに。
Yeah, sure.
給料出るんだ。
After Genki 1, we'll be covering Genki 2, and eventually even intermediate textbooks. Detailed grammar lessons and Japanese Q&As will, as always, be on the YouTube for free. ToKini Andy Patreon, live right now. よろしくね。
よろしくお願いします。